Right, good evening, everyone, and happy holidays. Good to see all of you. I would like to welcome you to the work session for the City Council for the City of Wildwood for Monday, December 13, 2021. Ms. Elders, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Boland,
Here.
Councilmember Galani,
Here.
Councilmember Hopper,
Here.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Here.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Here.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Here.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Here.
Councilmember Edens,
Here.
Councilmember Bros, Councilmember Garitano,
Here.
Councilmember Flasher,
Here.
Councilmember Rambo,
Here.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Here.
Councilmember Farmer,
Here.
Councilmember Nyan,
Here.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Here.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Excellent. All right. Good to see all of you and welcome again. Moving into informational items before we go to action items, I believe we have 20. Is there anything under information that any member of the council would like to discuss before we go to action items? Councilor McCutcheon.
Yeah, I was wondering if I could get a construction date for the Birch Forest turnaround.
Mr. Vinich.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, I think Rick Brown may be able to provide some additional information as well. But with the passage of the bill tonight, if such were to happen, we would engage with the contractor to complete the contractual component. And our hope would be that we could start sometime right after the first of the year. And if
Thank you.
Mr. Brown has a different timeline, I'd sure like, he certainly could add it now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything further, Councilmember McCutcheon? All right, Councilor Garitano.
Yeah, I have a question and would be directed to Director Vunich. You know, we last spoke a while back about Center Avenue, and I just wanted to find out if there was an update regarding that on the next steps.
Mr. Vinich.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chair, Councilmember Garitano and City Council, the process is underway. The city attorney is trying to complete a title search, and what we're finding as in past years, but particularly with the pandemic and all the things associated with it, the title companies are struggling to just keep pace with work from months past. Mr. Young has had to go to at least 2 different title companies and has had little success in completing that process. In the interim, though, Mr. Young has been working on the revised agreement for 3 of the property owners and then the quick claim deeds for the remainder of holders of right on Center Avenue. So it's not at a standstill, but certainly if we can find a title company that can complete the work, we'd be in much better shape and be able to give you a much more definitive time frame. Thank you.
Just a follow-up, and I might know this, but I just can't remember right now. Is that a dependency on the quick claim deeds, or can these 2 happen both in parallel, the title work and the quick claim deed for those homeowners?
City Attorney Young?
We would have to get the title work done so that we know who to have the quitclaim deeds from.
So it's on the third title company right now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Have they provided any kind of ETA on?
Not yet, no.
Okay.
Well, there are lots of title companies.
There are.
Anything further, Councilmember Garetano?
No, that's all.
Councilmember Edens?
Okay, this is for Director Brown. So I appreciate the memo on Brentmore after a resident came up and talked. So just to generally paraphrase it, it sounds like some of the additional trees they were requesting that they were looking for, if there was money in the budget, you're not going to commit until there's a full citywide tree evaluation. Is that correct? And so that would be the same as for Valley View as well.
Brown?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Edens, essentially, that's what I was suggesting, is that the priority thus far and what we budgeted for is to replace the ash trees primarily that are dying, those trees that are dying and need to be replaced from that reason. They have referenced that they do have some vacant tree sites in Brentmore, and I think the reality is we probably have vacant tree sites throughout City of Wildwood and pretty much every subdivision. So
Yep.
the thought was to have a survey done where we could get a handle on the exact number of those vacant sites and then prioritize a response and a replanting of those sites as well, and the impact on our budget.
Okay. And will that sort of be first come, first serve in terms of request and prioritizing vacant, or will it be, let's say your neighborhood has 50% of the original trees missing that were on the plat, then for aesthetic reasons, that would move up the list quicker than another subdivision?
Well, that's certainly a good question, and I don't know that I know the answer. I think what I was suggesting is that this would be presented to Admin Public Works, and we could wrestle through that very issue at Admin Public Works, if that's okay.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Clark?
Nice. This question, I suppose, would be for Mr. Vunich. Under the reserve, we received two letters from attorneys, and one was from the property owner's attorney. And in it, the first paragraph, he says that the tree consultant's comments were forwarded to the attorneys representing the property owners. No response from property owner representatives have been received. That was a quote. Then he says that statement is inaccurate. What's your viewpoint of this? Was it inaccurate? Did they really? He says that approximately 3 weeks before the report, comments were forwarded to the city.
Councilmember Clark, that may be true. In this particular instance, the three legs of the stool were the attorney representing the property owner, the attorney representing the developer, and the city attorney. And somehow I got looped into the matter from the developer's attorney and then trying to assist John Young. Suffice to say, we provided the amendments to the agreement that the attorney for the property owners sought to Davie Resource Group. They forwarded it on to their national headquarters. Their attorney reviewed it, made some comments. Those were referred back to the attorney representing the property owners. And I had also tried to keep the developer's attorney in the loop. So in all of that, there's a good chance that at some point, one didn't get to the other that I thought had. But I will assure you that I was doing the best I could to make sure everybody had the same information relatively at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. And I was definitely not saying that you had done something inappropriate. I was just wondering if they did send this to somebody that we didn't get it. Is there some way we can get those comments that he says were sent?
Ms. Clark, Mr. Young may have received them and certainly could provide them to the department, and then we could forward them on to City Council, or Mr. Young could send them to all of you. Again, if he received them.
Thank you.
Okay, anything further under informational items, Councilmember Dodwell?
On Prime Place, they were issued a grading permit on November 1st. I haven't seen any activity. Have you gotten any update from the developers on that?
Mr. Vintage?
Again, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Dodwell, it was all quiet, so to speak, until today. And today we received a package of plan revisions, many of which had been identified by the City Council or the Planning and Zoning Commission, along with a number of response letters, along with drafts of the general warranty deed for the dedication of Eastgate Lane. So we went from pretty quiet to now we're going to be very busy. And I assume that quiet period was when the engineer Stock and Associates was addressing all of the comments and other items that are necessary to proceed forward to the next step in the process, which is the construction plans, or what we call the improvement plans. Thank you.
Anything further under informational items? All right, seeing none, moving into action items. The first is from the Planning and Parks Department, Planning and Parks Committee, and it relates to phase 1 of the Village Green. I think everyone has received a memo relative to that, along with the diagram that is now being presented visually. And so, Mr. Vintage, if you could, if you have anything to add to that, that would be great. And specifically what it is you would be looking for the council to do this evening relative to this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'll be as brief as possible, knowing we have an executive session as well tonight. The Planning and Parks Committee has been wrestling with the issue of how to proceed forward with development of the Village Green, knowing its ultimate price tag for all of the items in the master plan is over $12 million. The Planning and Parks Committee ultimately engaged Human Nature, the consultant for our master plan, to come up with a phase 1 plan, and that is what is before you tonight. As you can see, the phase 1 plan does have a cost associated with it that is not small in size, but the Planning and Parks Committee, along with the Department of Planning and Parks staff, have 2 grant resources that we are actively pursuing now to reduce that amount. And in 2023, as part of the 5-year plan, the City Council has set aside, I believe, $700,000 for this project. If the grant applications are successful, along with money set aside for a future year in capital improvements, we could complete phase 1. So tonight, the Planning and Parks Committee is respectfully requesting the City Council endorse the phase 1 plan and allow the next step to proceed forward, which is a submittal from the consultant of a contract to do the design and engineering so that ultimately bidding could proceed forward. Thank you.
So, Mr. Vintage, is my understanding correct that it's not, you're not asking at this point for the expenditure of funds, you're just asking for proceeding forward with obtaining matching grants and that sort of thing, so that the expenditure of funds would eventually come back to the council with that matching fund information, is that correct?
Most certainly. The department is endorsing the amount at this time. What it is seeking is an endorsement of the plan, because it is a little less than what most probably would expect, but it is a phase. And then the endorsement of us pursuing those grant applications. Ultimately, we'll be bringing resolutions forward for those grant applications, but we certainly wanted you all to know what we're doing. Thank you.
Okay, and this is in our strategic plans, I think you mentioned. Councilmember Bartoni?
I'll make the motion that we move forward with the department's recommendation.
Okay, we have a motion to move forward with the department's recommendation, seconded by Councilmember Flasher. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Vintage and
Thank
Mr.
you.
Bartoni for making the motion. Moving next to a more minor item, which is something we do historically every December to give our city team members and all of you time with your families, as well as residents who would come to a meeting by, much as we did last month, canceling the second meeting for the month of January. would someone like to make a motion to do the same thing this year? Maybe Councilmember I'm sorry, December, my apology, moving forward too fast. Maybe Councilmember Bartoni, seconded by Councilmember Farmer. Any discussion on the motion? See no discussion. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. That moves us into the next item under administration, which is the 2022 City Council calendar. That's been provided to everyone. If you have no comments or questions about it, I would also ask for a motion to approve that. But just a moment, Mr. Cross wants to make a comment relative to that. Mr. Cross.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one small change that I would like to introduce to the calendar, and that has to do with the Economic Development Committee. It is noted that on most of the meetings monthly, they start at 5:30, and that should be changed to 6 p.m. with the exception of a few months where there is a doubling up. There's a meeting at 5:30, which would be the Economic Development Committee, and then at 6 o'clock or 6:30 rather, then there would be a follow-on meeting, be it admin, PW or something, where there are two meetings in one night. In October, when we address the budget, that comes into play again. So for those months where it makes sense, and I had a discussion with Ms. Edens earlier today, I would like to introduce a change to changing the 5:30 start time to 6 p.m.
Okay. Without objection, we can take that as an editorial change. Is there any objection to making that change throughout the calendar? All right. Seeing none. Anything further, Mr. Cross? All right. Any other questions from any member of the council? I'd ask for a motion to approve the calendar, please. Maybe Councilmember McCutcheon, seconded by Councilmember Galani. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion on the motion, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. That takes us to executive session, and we also have a few items under miscellaneous receipt and file. Would there be any objection from the council to expedite the meeting and our city team member time so they don't have to necessarily wait on us if we switch these two and did the receipt and file before we do the, okay. Well, if there's no objection, we're just going to do, okay. Any objection to doing that? All right. Mr. Vintage, receipt and file number 1 is PZ 4-98 AT&T Wireless. Anything you'd like to mention about that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor and members of City Council, this is a telecommunication tower that was approved by resolution creating the conditional use permit. The Planning and Zoning Commission granted a 1-year extension to the tower's location and existence. And as with any action of the Planning and Zoning Commission on a conditional use permit, the City Council has the right to review. And that review period is 15 days and begins with your receipt of this report. This is one of 2 towers on Joe's Way and provides service in an area that is desperately in need of it from a wireless standpoint. If there are any questions, the department would be glad to try to answer them at this time.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Joe relative to PZ 4-98? All right, seeing none, Mr. Vintage, the next item I believe is yours as well, P&Z's calendar for 2022.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor and members of City Council, the Planning and Zoning Commission adopted its meeting schedule for 2022. That meeting schedule again continues forward 1 meeting a month, the first Monday of each month. And if there are any questions regarding it, the department would be glad to answer them at this time.
Councilmember Dodwell.
It appears on the calendar there are several Sunday meetings circled. Just curious as to whether you're going to hold them on Sunday or we need to make an edit on that.
We certainly need to make a correction. They're Mondays. So thanks for catching that and my apology. You can't imagine how many people have looked at that. So we'll correct it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Dodwell, for making that point. So if there's no objection editorially, that will be done. Given that that was just a clerical error, I'm assuming, but nevertheless, something that's important to do. Okay. Any other questions on the Planning and Zoning Commission's 2022 calendar? Right, seeing none. Last, Joe, the Special Circumstances Overlay District document matrix.
Again, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Mayor and members of City Council. As you know, a public hearing was held in June of 2021 on the 10 properties that were being considered for the first applications of the Special Circumstances Overlay District. It is now almost 6 months later, but I can assure you that during that 6 months, a lot of work has been accomplished. First and foremost, Mr. Cross and I met with the US EPA to kind of get an update on a number of items relating to the Bliss site, the Callahan property, etc. We also have been responding to questions that came from our Planning and Zoning Commission. And finally, the last item was to create basically a matrix of the documents that are now available from either the US EPA, the Missouri Department of Natural Sources, or other sources of the same. So tonight it is just for your information. And certainly if you review it and see anything you'd like to review, please let us know. And if we've missed something that you know that's out there, please let us know. I would identify that the 2 white papers that were prepared by the city of Wildwood in 2016 are also on that matrix list. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Joe relative to that item? All right, seeing none, that concludes the miscellaneous section of the work session agenda, which leaves us with the executive session and an adjournment thereafter. If everyone's in an agreement with an executive session, I would ask for a motion to go into closed session. Made by Councilmember Farmer, second by Councilmember Clark.
Mr. Brost, are you seeing anything?
I seemed like I got cut off.
Yeah, me too. Oh, here we come.
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Nyan,
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to go into closed session, and those of you who are, we will need our city attorney with us for actually, we're going to handle one item just with the council, and then we'll need our city administrator and our city attorney for the next 2. So if you 2 could remain close, that would be great. All right. So, yep, in the hallway. Okay, and we're gonna, if there's no objection, we'll do it here. That means microphones off and laptops closed. Is that correct, Travis? All right.
Not that.
So. For the officers. The mayor steps off and down.
All right, council members, we're still in the work session. I think our business is completed in the work session, so I would ask for a motion to adjourn the work session. Made by Councilmember Dodwell, seconded by Councilmember Hopper. Non-debatable motion. All in favor of the motion to adjourn, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. All right, moving into our main meeting, and I want to thank those of you who were waiting for this. We had a lengthy executive session. We need to get through some things, so thank you so much for your patience. It's good to see all of you and happy holidays. I'd like to call the meeting of the City Council for the City of Wildwood for Monday, December 13, 2021 to order. Ms. Eldridge, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Boland,
Here.
Councilmember Galani,
Here.
Councilmember Hopper,
Here.
Councilmember Jaxi, Councilmember Bertolino,
Here.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Here.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Here.
Councilmember Edens,
Here.
Councilmember Bros,
Here.
Councilmember Garitano,
Here.
Councilmember Flasher,
Here.
Councilmember Rambo,
Here.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Here.
Councilmember Farmer,
Here.
Councilmember Nyan,
Here.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Here.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Welcome again. For those of you who are comfortably able, if you would please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. Moving next to minutes from the council's November 8, 2021 work session regular meeting. Those have been provided to you, members of the council. If you have any questions, happy to entertain those or suggested changes. If not, I would ask for a motion to approve the minutes as presented. Made by Councilmember Ottenberg, seconded by Councilmember Farmer. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion on the motion, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Councilmember Brost, I'm sorry, I think I called that too early. You were in favor of the motion, is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. My apology for that. Any opposed? Any abstentions? We have one abstention, Councilmember Hopper. Any other abstentions? Okay, motion carries. Moving next to public participation, I just want to mention a couple of words about that before we begin. It is a valuable component of our meeting. Anyone who wishes to speak must indicate they would like to do that by raising your hand on Zoom or filling out a card and providing it to our city clerk, who is seated to your left. When your name is called, please state your name and ward. To ensure that all who wish to speak have the opportunity to do so, there is a 5-minute time limitation, and I will let you know when that time limit is reached. If you have any questions for us, please mention that during your remarks and identify the official you would like to respond. That official will make note of it, and at the conclusion of public participation, any official who chooses to respond will have 3 minutes to do so as to all questions directed to that official. The official may choose to respond to your questions after tonight's meeting, and we may also post any responses on the City Council page of our website. And finally, please be respectful to others in making your remarks. Interrupting others and using profane and abusive language are, for example, prohibited. And I want to thank everyone in advance for following these. First speaker card, please.
The first speaker card is Ryan Leslie wishing to comment about Bill 2661.
Thank you, Brian Leslie, Ward 1. I know you have a full agenda. I'll be very brief. I know my face is probably familiar to you. I've spoken to you about internet access for, I think, going on 7 years since I moved in to Wildwood. I've been to many of your meetings and lots of the rural internet access committee meetings. Since I spoke to you last, my neighborhood went from underserved to unserved. AT&T decided not to assign any more business for their DSL lines, even if that DSL line was in the home when it was sold. This has affected my neighbors in my neighborhood. So I'll admit that many of the nights that I was here, I didn't ever think I'd see this night. And I'm here primarily to say thank you to you all. Specifically, Councilmember Gross, thank you for your diligence and for your skillful advocating for us in Ward 1. Councilmember Rainbow, thank you for your communication. The meaningful email that you and I shared. Mayor, thank you for championing this issue. Thank you for realizing how much it impacts the residents and how much it truly needed in some part of the city. I'm not good with Robert's rules, but I'd ask of you if there's a possibility to have a second reading of Bill 2661 and a vote this evening that it be exercised. Mayor, since your Facebook post was shared, to me by a resident, 110 likes, 42 comments, 9 shares, mostly overwhelmingly positive response to this news. The community is excited about this, and we're eager to see this come to fruition. I can think of no more important piece of business to close out 2021 and usher in a new year with a new era of connectivity for the city of Wildwood. So I'd ask if there's any way that this could be a second reading, if that would be entertained, that would be great to hear. I can't say I've got a prior commitment, but I do appreciate it. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. Next speaker card, please.
I do not have any more speaker cards.
Okay, thank you. Travis, anyone that has raised their hand on Zoom?
Yes.
All right. Thank you for being here and making your comments. So moving next to mayor announcements, we have a couple of proclamations. Officers Reeder and Windling, if you would please meet me right over there on the corner of the dais, I would appreciate it. We actually have a third officer, Wittes, who had something come up with his family and is not able to be here this evening. So we will do that at a later date, hopefully. The first one that we have on the agenda is This is the time. All right, Officer Windley. So the occasion for tonight is, fortunately for them, unfortunately for us, they're retired after many years of service. And they deserve, I believe, to have our thanks and a proclamation from the city. And so if you'll bear with me, I have one for each one of you. I'm just going to read it. Whereas Sergeant Bradford G. Windling became a police officer in 1990 and joined the St. Louis County Police Department in 1994. Whereas in 2001, he attained the rank of sergeant and has supervised many precincts, including Wildwood. Whereas Sergeant Windling was responsible for developing the operational plans for all community events and functions conducted in the city of Wildwood. Whereas Sergeant Windling also has been responsible for overseeing court security for the city's municipal court. And most important, whereas Sergeant Windling, in his service to the city of Wildwood, experienced what many do not. Not having the benefit of much time to reflect as to how to handle exigent circumstances, but always being called upon to exercise the best of judgment, and not knowing whether the next situation encountered could mean the difference between life and death. Whereas he voluntarily chose his career of service, which has significantly benefited the city of Wildwood and its residents. And whereas Sergeant Windling's service personifies the type of leadership and citizenship the city of Wildwood is proud to recognize. And now, therefore, I, James R. Bolin, Mayor of the city of Wildwood, on behalf of the city of Wildwood, do on this 13th day of December 2021, and on the occasion of his retirement, hereby recognize Sergeant Windling for all of his career achievements and thank him for his selfless service to our city and its residents. Next, we have Officer Reeder. Whereas Officer Jamie E. Reeder became a police officer in 1992 when she joined the St. Louis County Police Department. Whereas she subsequently served as a detective in both the department's Bureau of Crimes Against Persons and Bureau of Drug Enforcement. Whereas in 2009, she joined the Wildwood Police Precinct. Whereas Officer Reeder was commonly known and respected for her talent as a problem solving and mediating neighborhood and resident issues. And whereas in her service to the city of Wildwood, she also experienced what many do not having the benefit of much time to reflect as to how to handle exigent circumstances, but always being called upon to exercise the best of judgment, and not knowing whether the next situation encountered could mean the difference between life and death. Whereas Officer Reeder voluntarily chose her career of service, which has significantly benefited the city of Wildwood and its residents. Whereas her service personifies the type of leadership and citizenship the city of Wildwood is proud, very proud, to recognize. Now, therefore, I, James R. Bolin, Mayor of the city of Wildwood, on behalf of the city of Wildwood, do on this 13th day of December 2021, and on the occasion of her retirement, hereby recognize Officer Jamie E. Reeder on all of her career achievements and thank her for her selfless service to our city and its residents. All right. Anything you would like to share with us? No, this is great working with our. Appreciate the trust.
I too, I appreciate Wildwood. It's been out of my 29 years of service. I've spent the largest amount here, and it's been an honor.
The honor is all ours. All right. Best of luck to you in your career. You'll always have a place here if you want to come. Good, excellent. All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Can't thank you enough.
All right, next under mayor announcements, you've probably seen my memo regarding Bill 2655, the proposed local use tax. We'll get to that when we discuss the bill. But if you have any questions on that memorandum at this point, I'm happy to answer them. All right, seeing none. Moving next into appointments, we have one I'm very happy to make. This is to fill an alternate position on our Board of Adjustment, and I'm very honored to appoint Mr. Dan Sides from Ward 6, who's with us this evening, to fill the unexpired term on that board. I know he's going to do a great job. He's real excited about it. So if you have any questions for Dan or me, we're happy to answer them. Otherwise, I would ask for a motion to approve the appointment as presented. Ward 6. We have a motion to approve the appointment, seconded by Councilmember Jackson, seconded by Councilmember Rambo. Any questions on the motion? Seeing no questions, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Congratulations, Dan, and thank you so much for being part of our team and being willing to serve our city. We appreciate it. All right, moving into legislation. The first bill is 2650. It's before the council for final passage, and it concerns all wards. Is there a motion for the second reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Bertolino. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Bartoni. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2650.
Bill 2650, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute certain public roads, rights of way, and parks maintenance agreements on behalf of the city with certain contractors for public roads, rights of way, and parks maintenance within the city. Second reading.
Thank you. Rick, do you have anything further you want to mention to the council relative to the bill?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do actually, I need to ask the city council if they would provide a motion to amend the bill 2650 to the amended bill that's been attached to the agenda. The reason for the request is we were informed last week that one of our right-of-way maintenance contractors is unable to contract with us for 2022, and that would be Krupp Construction, unfortunately.
Okay, I think you may have misspoke there. So you want them to amend it to we can't amend it to be compliant with the bill that we're amending. So I think you mean amended bill to reflect a different contract or a different service provider, or what exactly are they, the council, amending it to do?
We want to amend Bill 2650 to Bill 2650 amended is the way it's listed, or is it 2650A?
Okay, and my question is, what is that amendment doing?
The amendment would account for the fact that we have been notified as of last week that one of our right-of-way contractors that was originally in Bill 2650 will no longer be able to contract with this, so they are omitted from the bill.
Okay, would someone like to make that motion? We're just omitting one of the contractors, basically. Made by Councilmember Farmer, seconded by Councilmember Bartoni. Any discussion on the motion to amend Bill 2650 as has been made in the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so the matter on the floor is the original motion to move forward with Bill 2650 as amended. Is there anything, Rick, anything further you want to mention on the bill other than what you just said?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I have nothing further, but I'm available for any questions.
Okay, any questions for Rick or any comments from any member of the council relative to Bill 2650 as amended? Councilmember Clark.
Yeah, I just was thinking about from last meeting, didn't Councilmember McCutcheon ask for some kind of an attachment to that bill? You don't recall?
I don't recall that. I really don't recall that, Councilmember Clark.
Okay. Well, I'm just testing you.
Any other questions or comments on the bill? All right, seeing none, Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll for final passage of Bill 2650 as amended.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Edens.
Yes.
Councilmember Bros,
Yes.
Councilmember Garitano,
Yes.
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo.
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Nian,
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani,
Yes.
Councilmember Hopper.
Yes.
Okay, the bill is now in force. Moving next to Bill 2651, it's before the council also for final passage, and it concerns three wards, Wards 4, 7, and 8. Is there a motion for the second reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Dodwell, second by Councilmember Hopper. All in favor of the motion for second reading, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2651.
Bill 2651, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute a supplemental agreement on behalf of the city of Wildwood with Lockmuller Group Incorporated to complete final design with additional required engineering services for the Manchester and Taylor Road resurfacing and signal improvement project, second reading.
Thank you. Rick, anything further you want to mention on Bill 2651?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I have nothing additional to add, but again, available for any questions from the city council.
Thank you. Any questions for Rick or any comments from any member of the council regarding the bill? Seeing none, Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll for final passage of Bill 2651.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Edens.
Yes.
Councilmember Bros,
Yes.
Councilmember Garitano,
Yes.
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Nian,
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani,
Yes.
Councilmember Hopper,
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi.
Yes.
Okay, the bill passes. Moving next to Bill 2652 is before the council for final passage, and it concerns Ward 5. Is there a motion for the second reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember McCutcheon, seconded by Councilmember Bertolino. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2652.
Bill 2652, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute a city contractor agreement on behalf of the city with KJU Incorporated, doing business as KJ Understall Understall Construction Company for the installation of the Birch Forest Drive turnaround and emergency access drive as shown on the design plans and bid specifications, along with all incidental items, second reading.
Thank you. Mr. Bennett, do you have anything further you want to mention relative to Bill 2652?
Mr. Mayor, I do not, but Mr. Brown and I are available for any questions. And we have just posted on the screen the plan sheet for this improvement if there are any questions regarding that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bartoni.
Thank you. Joe, is the plan still to have, or it might be for Rick, to still have like no parking signs in that gray area, just so residents and visitors don't use it as a parking lot? And if so, like, how will we enforce that?
Well, certainly, Mr. Bartoni, the intent is to not have parking in that area because it is a turnaround. So yes, we will have signs posted and will depend on the police department and adjoining neighbors to tell if there is a problem, and then enforce if there is a problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Edens.
Yes, I would just suggest that the council use this as a way to learn for the future. There was an opportunity to work in different designs when Brightleaf was done that could have been at the cost of the developer, and that wasn't done. And so as we're looking at new subdivisions in other areas that may abut to another stub street or a different neighborhood that would require an additional emergency outlet, we need to think about, what will the future residents want? So not just the current ones that are living there, but who they will sell their house to in the future and whether or not they want those street improvements. So I wish it was done differently. It wasn't, but I'm going to support it because it looks a mess. I've looked at it, but let's learn from this in the future.
Mr. Vintage, do you have anything you want to say in regard to that process?
Well, Mr. Mayor, certainly the current condition isn't as desirable as one would like. And I certainly understand Councilmember Eden's comments. The project itself had a number of issues relating to access and extension of stub streets. At the end of the day, it was a compromise, and certainly we all can learn from that compromise. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome. Councilmember McCutcheon.
Yeah, I realize Councilmember Edens was not on council at the time. The villages of Brightleaf started being discussed. There was a number of different discussions and options for what should happen here, most of which the residents were not allowed input onto because of the way it was being managed at the time. But the residents, both in villages of Brightleaf and Birch Forest, are both approved of this change. It's both beneficial. Matter of fact, the residents who moved in villages of Brightleaf do not even want emergency access in that area. And I hope we have learned some lessons from villages of Brightleaf. And I think some of the more positive things that are coming about with the developments that are underway right now is because of the issues that we addressed with the villages of Brightleaf.
Thank you. All right, anything further? Seeing none, Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll for final passage of Bill 2652.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Edens,
Yes.
Councilmember Bros,
Yes.
Councilmember Garitano,
Yes.
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Nyan,
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani,
Yes.
Councilmember Hopper,
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Yes.
Okay, the bill passes. Moving next to Bill 2653 relating to the adoption of the budget. It's also for final passage. I know we had discussion on this. Any questions from any member of the council about it? All right, seeing none, is there a motion for the second reading of the bill? Is there a motion for the second reading of the bill made by Councilmember Dodwell? Is there a second to the motion made by Councilmember Clark? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2653.
Bill 2653, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, adopting the municipal budget and capital improvement program for the city of Wildwood for fiscal year 2022, second reading.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions on the bill? All right, Councilmember McCutcheon.
If it's appropriate at this time, I'd like to make an amendment. Is that possible?
Depends on what the amendment is. What is the amendment?
The amendment is related to TGA funds, which are unencumbered at this point in time,
Which are what again? I'm sorry.
unencumbered,
What would your motion be?
to utilize those funds for a safety issue in Ward 5.
I think that would be germane. Okay, so go ahead and state your motion.
This is strategic plan in the Public Works and Safety section under safety improvements. It has listed the median improvement for the Pine Grover Parkway area in Ward 5. Under budget items, the East TGA funds are available for qualified capital improvement programs. And in the 2022 budget, there are not any capital improvement projects scheduled that are available for those funds. In 2022, the East TGA fund balance is expected
Okay,
to.
just one second. So I want to let's get your motion and then you can speak to it if we have a second. So
Okay.
what is your specific motion that you're wanting to do?
I would like to amend the budget in order to utilize the TGA East funds to design the improvement of the Pine Grover Parkway for safety reasons.
Okay, of TGA East funds, you say? Okay. Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Councilmember Bertolino. All right, now you can speak to your motion.
Okay. So when the Villages of Brightleaf was developed, anytime a development is underway or underway, there's TGA funds collected for each one of those developments. And one of the reasons that we have TGA funds is if there is some offsite concerns related to that development, and therefore that money can be utilized for any kind of capital improvements related to specifically streets. And because of the fact that the Pine Grover Parkway has been mentioned multiple times as a safety hazard, where we have residents who are actually passing residents who are going the speed limit around so they don't have to adhere to the speed limit. We've had multiple residents complain for multiple years. This was in fact related to the Villages of Brightleaf development at one point in time and was in the budget, but was removed during the process of developing the Villages Leaf Bright.
And what amount are we talking about?
The design is 50,000. And the balance in the TGA funds at this point in time is $760,703.
Okay, so your motion is specifically to the 50,000, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and we have a second. Any discussion on the motion to amend the budget? Councilmember Edens?
Okay, I have a comment, but first I want to ask a clarifying question. So what you're recommending on that section where it's considerably wide on Pine Grover, or where we renamed, because it was supposed to be a through street and not
I'm advocating for a median to enhance the safety. Yes.
with planting. Okay, so, a couple of comments about that. We're already having trouble maintaining some of the landscaping in other planted areas that already exist. And so I have concerns about adding any new median landscaping right now. My other thought is, yes, the subdivision was added, but there's no exit at the end of that road because there's a park. So it's the same traffic that has kind of always been there. And I hate last minute, throwing out something because we all have so many other safety concerns in our own ward. Everything from guardrails that need added, going around blind curves, iced roads. I can't support it without further discussion. I mean, if you want it to go through Public Works or something like that, then that's fine, but I don't think we can just add plantings and call it public safety.
Well, I didn't.
That's all I have to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councilor McCutcheon.
So I wasn't asking for plantings. I'm asking for a median for safety reasons. One of the reasons that road was as wide as it was when it was developed, what had to do with the road going through eventually. But this is not to do with added traffic from the Villages of Brightleaf Fund, our development. This is because we have a speeding issue where residents are passing other residents. If the road was not that wide, that would not be an option for them. So it's not about plantings. It's not about additional traffic. It's about safety, especially since we have a school crossing right there from 3 different angles. So it's purely safety.
Councilor Gaetano.
Yeah, I was wondering, because it is kind of like last minute and without having to do the analysis or have it discussed in committee, maybe there's some other tools that we have. We just did this on Thunder Ridge where we made it a child safety area, which is higher penalties. We can put a permanent radar sign or temporary. We could work with the police for greater enforcement. There's potentially maybe some restriping or 4-way stops, things that might be tools that are without we have a balanced budget. So I'm just a little worried that, shifting things around at kind of the 11th hour, we've got other tools that we could maybe look at that would help and then kind of see, because it is part of the 5-year plan. I think it's just that I think you're just trying to accelerate it.
Yeah, accelerate for safety reasons, but this hasn't been my last minute request. If you remember, I discussed this option earlier during the budget process, and we have tried 4-way stops. We have tried speed monitoring. They don't seem to be helping the situation, but if you would like to take it through admin public works, then I will withdraw my motion.
I think it would be.
I'd recommend Board of Public Safety
Board of
since it's a
Okay.
safety issue.
Or public,
Okay,
then I withdraw my motion.
Okay, once a motion has been made and seconded, it can only be withdrawn with unanimous consent of the council because at that point it becomes the property of the full council. So is there any objection to the maker of the motion withdrawing the motion to amend? Seeing no objection, the motion is withdrawn. We're now back to the main motion, which is Bill 2653. Any further discussion on the budget? Seeing none. Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll for final passage of the 2022 budget for the city of Wildwood.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Edens,
Yes.
Councilmember Bros,
Yes.
Councilmember Garitano,
yes.
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Nian,
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani,
Yes.
Councilmember Hopper,
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The bill passes. Moving next to Bill 2654. It's before the council for final passage, concerns our agreement with the St. Louis County for our police, and it concerns therefore all wards. Is there a motion for the second reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Jaxi, seconded by Councilmember Bertolino. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2654.
Bill 2654, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to execute a police service agreement by and between St. Louis County and the city of Wildwood, second reading.
Okay, thank you. As you know, council members, you were provided with a copy of the contract for this service, which is much more extensive, this isn't a price issue or terms. It's just about having a more comprehensive, sophisticated agreement that is frankly good for both parties. And so because of that, we would need to get a motion to amend the bill to provide that it would be upon the terms that have now been presented to the council with this revised agreement. If there's no objection to that or no one has any questions, I would ask for someone to please make a motion to that effect. Made by Councilmember Jaxi, second by Councilmember Clark. So the discussion is now on the amendment to the bill. Any discussion on the amendment? See no discussion on the amendment. All in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So the amendment passes and we're now with the bill before the council as amended. Is there any further discussion on the bill or any questions? Seeing none, Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll for final passage of Bill 2654.
Councilmember Edens,
Yes.
Councilmember Bros,
Yes.
Councilmember Garitano, Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer, Councilmember Nian,
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani,
Yes.
Councilmember Hopper,
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg.
Yes.
So the bill passes and is in force and I will be signing the contract. Next, I'm sorry. Oh, you're welcome. The Captain Mundell, who's with us, says thank you. Well, on behalf of all of us up here, Captain, I want to say thank you and your team for all that you do for the city. And I definitely appreciate the team that you had at the county that worked with our city attorney to get a better agreement in place in terms of the language and that sort of thing. I think we'll both be very, very happy for that long term. All right. Last, in terms of second readings, we go to Bill 2655. This concerns all wards. It relates to the proposed local use tax. Is there a motion for the second reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Dodwell, seconded by Councilmember Edens. Any discussion? All right. Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2655. Yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Rottenberg, Councilor Rottenberg.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm still troubled by this proposed legislation.
Well, so the motion is just for second reading, and then we'll have discussion
Perfect.
on the bill.
Sorry.
That's all right. Please read Bill 2655.
Bill 2655, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, submitting to the qualified voters of the city at the general municipal election to be held in the city on April 5th, 2022, a proposed local use tax, second reading.
Thank you. And if you would just indulge me for a quick few seconds. So as I mentioned, there was a memo that I wrote to all of you of a few days ago. And just to summarize it very quickly, following the last council meeting, I gave extensive consideration to arguments, the facts and timing and all sorts of things. And as you can see from that memo, I'm recommending to the council that this be postponed indefinitely. This is obviously your decision. And it really results from three things. One is the numbers of our sales tax revenue and how that might be interpreted relative to this. Number two, the several uncertainties relating to it. And three is a matter of timing. And the last thing I would mention is we are not under any time requirement to do this necessarily at this point. Thank you for considering my thoughts on it. And with that, thank you for your patience as well. Councilmember Ottenberg, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your comments, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I still remain troubled with this legislation for the reasons that I mentioned at the last city council meeting. At the last city council meeting, I mentioned some of the economic challenges our residents face right now. They've gotten only worse in the last 30 days. If we take a look at some of the inflation numbers, the annual inflation rate is now 6.8% as of the end of November. It's the highest it's been since June of 1982. Energy costs are up 33%. Gasoline specifically is up 58%. Food is up 6%. New vehicle prices are up 11%. And used vehicle prices are up 31%. These are some of the economic challenges our residents face. Add to that a significant tax increase that was passed several months ago. I feel very uncomfortable, and I have to agree with the mayor's comments. I feel very uncomfortable at this point in time having our residents find out shortly before Christmas that their city council is passing legislation that would ultimately result in their taxes going up. So for that reason, I would concur with the mayor. And if there was a vote tonight on this legislation, I will be voting no on it. Thank you.
Please state your point of information, Councilmember Edens.
Yes, the council member Ottenberg stated that it would result in an increase, but this is a ballot initiative. So this is not a direct vote. So I wanted to clarify that in your statement.
Yes, and thank you for that clarification. Yeah, I feel uncomfortable that we would ask the residents to consider voting on something that could ultimately increase their taxes.
Councilmember Hopper.
Yes, thank you. I would say I actually agree with Councilmember Ottenberg on this and with the mayor's comments as well. I kind of supported this the last time we discussed it, but it was a little bit of a misunderstanding of how this bill would work. And that I was kind of under the impression that the residents would still be paying the same amount of tax regardless of if we took that and since found out that's incorrect. So I agree that I don't think it's an appropriate time to request a tax increase in any type of form. And I would like to make a motion to postpone the vote on this.
Indefinitely or definitely?
Indefinitely.
So a motion to postpone indefinitely. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Flasher. So the discussion now will be on the motion to postpone indefinitely. We had two hands up before that motion was made. Councilmember Clark, Councilmember Bertolino. Are your comments on the motion to postpone indefinitely?
Yes.
Okay, please go ahead.
Well, I would agree with the reasoning in your memorandum. In addition to, it's a very complicated tax, and all of these things that you listed, plus we don't have the quantifiable data supporting this use tax, and we don't have a business plan case written out for including it on this ballot. I have a lot of questions about, is software included in this? Are services included in this? What is included in this? I've done research on it, but I still don't understand everything on this. So I would concur with the indefinite postponement.
Thank you. Councilor Bertolino. Okay, Councilor Garitano.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your memorandum here. I do appreciate Councilmember Edens stating that this is an item that would be presented to the voters of Wildwood to determine whether or not they wish to pass this use tax, which is for internet. And I did state previously how there are some imbalances in the current picture that we have, right? We have local businesses and we have a tax structure that basically incentivizes people to shop if they wanted to look for the best bargain from an out-of-state online vendor. However, it's great to be able to see some of the information that the mayor has presented. It's good because sometimes you don't find out until something gets vetoed. So I think that, and that's always a tool that we want to try to avoid because we want to make sure we're making the right decisions. Councilmember Clark has some good questions, and I think based on the council at the last meeting, there were still a lot of questions around it. I think this is still a good tool to put in our toolbox for someday. I'm a big believer in trimming the fat. And I think that right now we're in a position where we can continue to look to find ways to make our city as efficient as possible by trimming any of the fat that's there, if there is, because I know they do a good job. And so I'm not want to imply that there is. You look good. So I will support the postponement. And we'll come back to this when we are ready to ask the Wildwood voters when we need to continue to support the services and programs. Thank you.
Councilor Edens.
Yep, so two clarifications. So the first is a question. Generally, when we postpone indefinitely, it kills the topic forever. But since this has a specific date for a specific ballot, if this is postponed indefinitely, it could be brought back up if the council so chooses with a different date, correct?
It can.
Okay, that's what I thought. So I do appreciate the memo, but a couple of things, when you're talking about revenue that stays the same over the last several years, and you've acknowledged inflation somewhere else, I think it's good to point out that if you are not increasing in terms of actual dollars taken in, that is less dollar power than you had the previous year every year with inflation. So I used just a real quick calculator. The year 2014 was mentioned in the memo. There's an extra 17 cents on the dollar for what a good or service would cost now. So if you're not increasing revenue, you're essentially losing the same amount of buying power. The other thing that I started thinking about last time when we talked about how this quote wayfair form replies to online goods, we talked about how we acknowledge that we had all increased in online purchase market share too. So council member Garitano brought it up, but the industry is also training us to shop differently when we shop online, and we're not generating taxes on that. So when I say it's training us to shop differently, how many of us increase our goods that we are purchasing because we want to qualify for that free shipping? We can pay $10.
Are you speaking on postponement or on the bill? Kind of getting on the bill.
It's kind of getting on the bill, but it's reasons for not postponing. But I can come back to the main motion.
Okay. If the motion to postpone fails.
If the motion to postpone fails, but.
So Councilor Rambo.
Yes, I'm not.
On
clear.
Postponement.
I kind of believe so. I'm having problem with the indefinite postponement. And so if we're intending to bring this back up, is it possible to decide on a time when we bring it back up, or is there some committee that can kick this around or something like that? And the reason I say that is because referring to your memo, you're right. The primary premise advanced was related to online sales. maybe our tax revenue has increased by $500,000, but it says it's been relatively constant since 2014. So I just looked up, I just Googled the CPI, and it's increased 43% since 2005, and add another 7% for 2021. And we're looking at 50% increase. As Mr. Ottenberg was saying, everything, costs have gone up for everything. So in relative terms, as Ms. Eden suggests, we have less money. And I think we've skated as taxpayers as internet sales have grown because we don't have to pay sales tax, but we're still using all the same facilities that were formerly funded, at least partly by local sales. And so postponing it indefinitely is not as good an idea in my mind as postponing it for 6 months until we can do what Ms. Clark suggested and have a better plan for what we're going to spend this money on and so forth. And so a final point I'll make real quickly is that if we pass this sales tax, or if the voters pass the sales tax, it will be $5 out of $1,000 expenditure.
Postponement.
That's
postponement.
Okay, so okay, sure, right. So I'm only in favor of postponement if we set a time.
So you can make a motion to so a motion to postpone to a definite time trumps a motion to postpone indefinitely.
Okay, do we divert it to committee, or what's the right?
I'm getting ready to tell you that.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So you could just make a motion to postpone. Your motion would be to postpone to a definite time, and you'll need to pick a time.
Okay.
And if that passes, that is the motion, and the motion to postpone indefinitely is gone. So do you want to make that motion?
Would it be for the full council?
I'm sorry.
Does it, would that suggest that the full council reconsider it, or does it go to some committee, or do we ask Mr. Cross? How do we?
However you want to word your motion, you could make it a motion to postpone definitely to a certain date with this to occur, or what have you. It's your motion.
Is it reasonable, Steve, to ask you to clarify some of the questions that Ms. Clark asked and others, and then get back to us? Can we postpone it for 6 months or something like that? Is that reasonable? Okay, so I would like to make that motion, postpone it for 6 months, and meantime, the city administrator tries to clarify some of the questions that you raised, that Clark raised and others.
Okay. So we have the motion to postpone definitely for 6 months. Is there a second to the motion to postpone definitely for 6 months? Seconded by Councilmember Jaxi. So this is discussion on the motion to postpone definitely, not on the bill. On the motion to postpone definitely, Councilmember McCutcheon.
So it's my understanding that the county of St. Louis will have this measure on their ballot, correct? Is that correct?
It's been proposed to be on their ballot.
Yes. So given that, and given all the other concerns for our residents at this point in time, I really do not support postponing temporarily. I think supporting indefinitely is appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Garitano.
Yeah, just regarding the postponement.
I'm sorry.
Sure.
My apology. Councilmember Bartoni was next.
Thank you. So I just want to kind of go over some of the maybe potholes if we do postpone. The number 2 item on our strategic plan, which has been referenced 2 times, maybe 3 times tonight, is find additional sources of revenue. And we found one, and we're kind of kicking it to the curb. The Missouri Municipal League and the president of the Missouri Municipal League, who sits up here with us tonight, has worked for years on behalf of the city. And it has not been an easy road. I don't know how many years it took to get this approved, but it wasn't an easy vote in Jeff City by any means. Another thing to consider is if we postpone, continuously ask our staff, sidebar, Steve, great job on putting a balanced budget together, but we continuously ask our staff to do more with less. We've added a Ward 5 pocket park recently. We've enhanced community park. And with that comes, there's more grass to cut, there's more maintenance, but there's no more money for those items either. So you know, we think, I'm sure that they would love to have more money for those items. Eventually, and I haven't had this myself, but eventually residents are going to notice if these items aren't maintained the way that they're used to. And, you know, we're going to start hearing about it. A couple things that have been said. One thing that we, you know, if we do postpone, it's my understanding that the Missouri Municipal League is going to help advocate and educate voters, which is something that we've discussed quite often. You know, in this April election, well, if Wildwood decides to postpone this a year, 2 years, 5 years, is the Missouri Municipal League going to be available to help educate the voters on behalf of one municipality? I just don't know the answer to that question. The other thing that keeps saying is the council is not approving a tax increase, and the voters would not be approving a tax increase. They would be approving taxing items that are not taxed today. That's the difference. They're
What
paying.
point of information that they would pay?
I'm sorry?
Point of information that they would pay.
That they would pay. Correct. They're not internet sales. A lot of internet sales are not taxed today. If this is not a tax increase, it's just everybody's getting taxed at the same rate. We have 2 small businesses that are closing their doors in our town center this month. And if you wouldn't ask them if internet sales vendors that don't charge a tax is not a disadvantage to them, you're naive. They are definitely impacted by that. And there's some small business owners here today, and I work with a lot of small business owners, and they will repeatedly tell me they don't want the government's help. Just stay out of my way and I can run my business, but they don't want competitive advantages to another business because of something the government's doing.
So are you
That's just
speaking
not
for or
fair.
against postponement?
I'm just talking about if we postpone it, some of the things to be considered.
Okay.
You know, so that's just what, you know, those are just things to consider. I don't, on a sidebar, somebody talked about the fuel increase. The fuel increase was not 12.5 cents. It was voted for 12.5 cents, but it's phased in at 2.5 cents over 5 years. That's something that I was kind of like actually had to work on myself. So, but it's still a tax increase, that's for sure.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Garitano, did I say?
Sure, I'll be quick. I would prefer, in my opinion, an indefinite postponement. It affords us greater flexibility than forcing a specific date. And then if it's indefinite, it can be brought up at the request of anyone. So with regards to the timing and what Councilmember Bartoni said, yes, there is educational information that will become available. Remember, cities are only limited to educating the community when it comes to ballot items. So advocacy for or against has to be done as a private citizen or via a committee. And I think that this is still a tool that's going to be very useful. We have some communities that need it today. But we also in Wildwood are very fortunate that we have very healthy reserves, especially when you look at the surrounding municipalities. And so we have to have a solid case to go to our residents to say, we need X number of dollars and here's how we're going to spend it. And if we don't have that information, you know, I do think that that puts us in a weak position, because how do you answer when you have to ask for additional dollars? But again, I think this is still something that many communities will benefit from. And so I think my buzzer went off over here. They got the hook for me here. So that's all.
I mean, if the shoe fits.
Thank you.
So one thing that Steve just mentioned, and it's in my memo relative to the postponement or non-postponement and the timing, which is postponement by its nature. And I pointed this out in the memo. St. Louis County, if they put this on the ballot, we are going to participate on a per capita basis. We're the third or so largest city in the county. And it is, at least in theory, possible that we may not ever need to pass a tax. We don't know what that number is going to be if it happens. And so that was my whole point. But in any event, okay. Anything finally, Councilmember Rambo?
Yeah. Mr. Bartoni made exactly the case that I was hoping to make, but I got flustered because I wasn't sure I was on the motion or not, and so on and so forth. And I hate being chastised by the mayor. And so,
The mayor wasn't chastising. He was
but
just pointing out.
it felt that way. It's reassuring to hear Mr. Garitano say that they are willing to work with us. The Municipal League is willing to work with us to clarify the situation and also to advocate on behalf of this. And so I am more comfortable now with an indefinite postponement rather than charging Steve with a whole bunch of work. And so if it's appropriate, I'll just withdraw my motion for a 6-month postponement. And then we can go back to the original indefinite postponement.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Rambo. And as I mentioned earlier, when this came up, once a motion is made and seconded, it is the possession of the full council. It can only be withdrawn by unanimous consent of the council. So you've heard the maker of the motion wishing to withdraw it. Is there any objection to the withdrawal of the motion to postpone to a time certain 6 months from now? Seeing no objection, your motion is withdrawn. We're now back to the motion prior to that, which was to postpone indefinitely. Had a lot of discussion. Councilmember Edens.
Yes, back on the motion to postpone indefinitely. Wherever you fall on this issue, there is nothing wrong with letting the voters decide. There is not going to be less need for the works that we have to do to maintain our city or the new infrastructure costs that we know we're going to incur. And yes, we have a lot in the reserves, but just a reminder, severe weather happens. I'd really like to have that money for something like a tornado or something else, so we're kicking the can. It's not the most fiscally responsible thing to do, and it doesn't change the facts in my mind. And this is the time when we have the momentum and that other cities are using it. So we're going to be back where we started. As in terms of what we'd spend it for, I'm really not sure how much more detailed information that we can get other than our 5-year strategic goals. We have a ton of projects that we would like to use it for, and $30 million estimated of work that we have on watershed erosion. We have needs. Those needs are itemized and prioritized by the city. So there's nothing wrong with giving the voters the power to understand an issue. They have the ability to educate themselves. And if they don't agree with us, that's okay. But put it on a ballot. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Edens. Respectfully, I take issue with the fact it is not fiscally irresponsible. I wouldn't have put this before you if I thought that to be the case. But relative to the point of letting the voters to decide and doing that now, one concern with that is if any of this that I put in the memo is correct and the voters reject it, I would argue that that really hamstrings you from doing it probably for the next at least 5 to 10 years, because otherwise you're going to be in an enviable position of going back to the voter, asking them to change their mind quickly after they just said no. So that was part of my analysis for that, but it's a different way of looking at it. Councilmember Clark on postponement.
Yes. And forgive me if I use the wrong terminology, because I probably will, but as I understand, the collection and remittance of this tax won't happen right away anyway. So we've got some time, and there's not going to be any retroactive collections, right? So
Correct.
Just doing it indefinitely, we can bring it back after we have some of these questions answered, and we feel more confident, and we can go to the voters with more confidence.
Okay, anything further? Councilor McCutcheon.
So I guess what really didn't explain, I just thought and didn't explain what I was thinking. So this this measure is also going to be put on St. Louis County ballot.
We believe that to be the case.
And if in fact that does happen, which it appears it will, then St. Louis County is going to be doing a lot of education around this issue at this point in time. We as a city will be getting funds from, if it passes, St. Louis County as well. So we will have some additional funds to address some of our projects if that measure passes. But I see absolutely no reason at this point in time to ask our residents to take the additional burden on or having to make an additional choice related to our city at this point in time. We do have a reserve. We're very fiscally responsible, and there's no reason to add additional tax at this point in time for our residents. So I'm for the favor of postponing indefinitely.
Right, so we've had a lot of discussion on postponing indefinitely. That is the motion on the floor. Roll call vote, please. A yes vote is to postpone indefinitely, a no vote is to not postpone indefinitely. If it fails, we'll go back to the main motion.
Councilmember Bros,
Yes.
Councilmember Garitano,
Yes.
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Nyan,
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani,
Yes.
Councilmember Hopper,
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Edens.
No.
Okay, so the motion to postpone indefinitely passes. That takes us to first readings. Council members, Bill 2656 and Bill 2657 both relate to adjusting of lots in Ward 8. And to expedite the business of the council this evening, if there's no objection, I would recommend that we have those read if there's a motion for it, and that we do those separately to get them read. And then once the vote occurs, we do one vote to take care of both. Is there any objection to doing that? Okay, seeing none, we'll start with Bill 2656. It's before the council first reading. Is there a motion for the first reading of the bill made by Councilmember Galani, seconded by Councilmember Garitano? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Next, we have Bill 2657 before the council, also for first reading concerning Ward 8. Is there a motion for the first reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Garitano, seconded by Councilmember Galani. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2656 and Bill 2657.
Bill 2656, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the consolidation of 3 legal lots of record into a single parcel of ground, such being lots 7, 8, and 9 of Grover Heights, Section 12, Township 44 North, Range 3 East, specifically situated on the southwest corner of the intersection of East Avenue and Manchester Road, to be hereafter known as Grover Heights Lot 7A, and thereby creating a 0.69 acre tract of land. First reading. Bill 2657, an ordinance by the City Council of the City of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing by ordinance the adjustment of 4 legal lots of record into 2 parcels of ground, such being adjusted lots A, B, and C of the Boundary Adjustment Survey, Plat Book 274, page 63, and a tract of land being in Section 12, Township 44 North, Range 3 East, and more specifically being situated on the east side of Woods Avenue, south of Manchester Road, and to be hereafter known as Rogers Drive re-subdivision, first reading, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Joe Vinich, do you have anything you want to mention relative to either of these bills?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, very briefly, regarding the first bill, this involves 3 legal non-conforming lots that would be consolidated into a legal, still non-conforming lot, but more conforming due to its size. This bill would also authorize the establishment of a subdivision information sign easement on the, what I would consider southwest corner of the property, to be used by the subdivision immediately to the south. This was a key component of discussions during this development of the plat. If there are any questions regarding it, the department would be glad to answer them at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. One question I have, Mr. Vinich, is there a need for a second reading on these this evening?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor. There are still a couple of outstanding issues that I'd like to address before we had a final passage. But thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Any questions for Joe on either of these bills? All right, they'll be on the council's agenda for its next meeting. Moving next to Bill 2658, it's before the council for first reading and it concerns Ward 5. Is there a motion for the first reading of the bill made by Councilmember McCutcheon, second by Councilmember Bertolino? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2658.
Bill 2658, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, amending chapter 390, traffic schedule 9, parking restrictions of the Code of Ordinances of the city of Wildwood by enacting new parking regulations on Dartmouth Crossing Drive and authorizing and directing the city traffic engineer to erect appropriate signage reflecting such parking regulations. First reading.
Thank you. Mr. Brown, anything you want to mention relative to Bill 2658?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have nothing additional to mention, but I'm available for any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Brown? Councilmember Dodwell.
Do we want to do a second reading? This question's more directed to the council members from the area.
If it's needed, if that's.
I don't see, maybe Captain Mundell would respond to, I don't see there's any rush. The issues have kind of resolved themselves with the parking, but we have still to follow through, but it's not urgent.
Thank you for the question, though. The captain is shaking his head no. So, all right. Any questions on the bill from any member of the council? All right. Moving next to Bill 2659. It's before the council also for first reading, and it concerns all wards. This relates to the two new changes that I initially proposed and have been through Board of Public Safety, also approving of them, making vehicle prowling, in other words, trying to find a car to steal or break into, and riding in a stolen car crimes in the city of Wildwood. Is there a motion for the first reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Hopper, second by Councilmember Bertolino. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2659.
Bill 2659, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, amending Article 7 of Chapter 210 of the Code of Ordinances of the city of Wildwood by enacting new sections 210.255 and 210.257 and providing for the offenses of vehicle prowling and tampering. First reading.
Thank you. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer those. Or anyone who's on the Board of Public Safety. Councilmember Bertolino.
Yeah, and look to Captain Mundell again, since we will not have a second meeting here in December, and since this is sort of a pressing issue with citizens, could we have a second vote on this tonight?
He's shaking his head yes, and I would completely agree. Would you like to make that?
I'd make that motion.
So you have a motion for second reading, seconded by Councilmember Hopper. You had your hand up, Councilmember Hopper, earlier. Is that what you? Okay, glad I acknowledged you for the second on that then. All right. Before we do that, though, that happened very quickly with the indulgence of the maker and second of that motion. Any questions from any member of the council on this? Councilmember Clark.
Under the definition for aircraft, does that also include drones flying over the cars?
We have a drone ordinance, by the way. That doesn't answer your question. We'll defer to the city attorney, but we do have a separate ordinance for that. City Attorney Young.
I think it's broad enough to be inclusive of that, yes.
Any other questions? Councilmember Edens.
Yep, I noticed on the definition under tampering that it was broader as well. So I don't know if that was previous language that is just being readopted, but it included gas and electric. My question was about that, what the reasoning was and why we didn't include anything indifferent that was also utility like phone or internet or something like that, or cable, since we're including other types of lines. I realize there's a public safety measure with something like gas being tampered with, but one could argue that information during an emergency, such as through phone or internet, would be valuable.
City Attorney Young.
Could I ask you?
Yeah, it was under the definition of tampering. Tampering with utility again under under 4. It's more than 4 here.
Yeah, I believe that's,
Speak up, John.
I believe that's because that has a certain basis.
Council members.
It has a basis in law already, and utilities are understood to be those type of services as opposed to the others.
Do we have something on the books then for tampering with the other types of utilities I mentioned?
In terms of phone or internet, I'm not aware of one, no.
Or cable? Can we look at that in the future then?
We can certainly look at it,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Bartoni.
Just so we don't have to look up our drone ordinance, can we add drones to this? That way we just know we're covered. I think Councilmember Clark brought up a good point because there are more and more of those out there and people are getting pretty crafty with those, no pun intended, and looking in, it'd be pretty easy to look into a car at night.
Well, the drone ordinance addresses a separate issue, and I would say that the definition of aircraft is sufficiently broad to encompass a drone.
Well, an airplane would also consider an aircraft, but we call out airplane, so that's what I'm saying. Can we just add drone and kind of appease this?
I would say we'd have to define drone because a drone does not necessarily have to be aerial. And if I remember correctly from our drone ordinance, we don't even use the term drone. We use unmanned flying vehicle.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion that's been seconded for a second reading. All in favor, this will take a 2/3 vote, supermajority to do a second reading at the same council meeting. All in favor, we'll try a voice vote and see where that goes. All in favor of the motion for second reading, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read the bill a second time.
Bill 2659, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, amending Article 7 of Chapter 210 of the Code of Ordinances of the city of Wildwood by enacting new sections 210.255 and 210.257 and providing for the offenses of vehicle prowling and tampering, second reading.
Thank you. Any further questions or discussion by the council? Seeing none, Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll of the council for final passage of Bill 2659.
Councilmember Garitano.
Yes.
Councilmember Flasher.
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo.
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon.
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni.
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Galani.
Yes.
Councilmember Hopper.
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi.
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino.
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell.
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg.
Yes.
Councilmember Edens.
Yes.
Councilmember Bros.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The bill passes and is now in effect. Moving next to Bill 2660, it concerns several wards, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8. It's before you for first reading. Is there a motion for the first reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Hopper, seconded by Councilmember Farmer. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2660.
Bill 2660, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with the United States Geological Survey, USGS, for a 2-year study of the Calks Creek watershed as part of the overall efforts of the city's Watershed Erosion Task Force, WETF, to develop environmentally appropriate and engineered solutions to ongoing concerns therein. First reading.
Thank you. Mr. Bennett, do you have anything you want to mention relative to Bill 2660?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if I may, please. Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, there was a memorandum prepared for work session tonight on the rationales for this bill being back before the City Council. Suffice to say, the United States Geological Survey via the federal government has some authorities and some characteristics that none of our private consultants or contractors have. And they've asked that the city consider modifications to its professional services agreement. Key amongst those is that they are requesting that the contract reference the full amount of the study, which would be for the 2-year period of time. The reason the USGS is requesting such is that their funds are done on a yearly basis, same as Wildwood. But if they are not encumbered as part of the original contract, they're awarded on a competitive basis. which could mean that the study would conclude after 1 year. The good news, the USGS bills on a quarterly basis. So certainly this is not a single payment at one time. It would be done on a quarterly basis over the 2-year period. If there are any questions, Mr. Brown and I would be glad to answer them at this time.
Thank you. Any questions for Joe or any comments? All right, seeing none, it'll be on the council's agenda for its next meeting. And finally, at first readings, moving next to Bill 2661. This is relating to the broadband infrastructure design, installation, and operation agreement that you have been provided with. It concerns all wards. Is there a motion for the first reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Jaxi, seconded by Councilmember Clark. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2661.
Bill 2661, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to execute a broadband infrastructure design, installation, and operation agreement. First reading.
Thank you. So I know we've had a lot of discussion about this, much of it because we had to in closed session for various reasons. So is there any other, Mr. Benich, do you want to speak to this, or Steve, this bill? Anything you want to say about it?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. But no, we had quite an extensive discussion earlier, so I have nothing further to add, but certainly I'm available for any questions, as I'm sure Mr. Young is as well. Thank you.
And I want to thank you and Mr. Young for your work in getting us to this point with this agreement, and for putting up with my calls every other day or so asking how things were going, and from other council members for that matter. All right. Any questions for Steve or our city attorney, or anything relevant to it? Okay. Councilmember Garetano.
Yeah, is the representative from Spectrum here? I thought
he was, and he is not here now.
So is he like gone for the night?
I would assume so.
All right, so really just two clarification questions for me. In the agreement that's attached on page 3, it says design plans. Show me the confidential plans and specifications for construction and installation of the broadband infrastructure dated referencing project number blank, a copy which is on file in the principal place of business of Spectrum in the state of Missouri and incorporated by reference herein, which includes the following. I'm just going to go jump to D, the property addresses or other reasonable property identifiers for each property within the service area. Spectrum will provide service subject to the provisions of this agreement. And then on a different page, the definition of service area shall mean the area depicted, actually same page, page 3, shall mean the area depicted on Exhibit A attached here to and incorporated. I understand, I know that the exhibit is not able to be shared, but I just want to make sure I get clarity. The design area, the design plan has a dependency there on the service area, which is depicted on the exhibit. Is that correct?
City Attorney Young, if you're okay with that, I would ask him to respond to that.
At a minimum, yes.
Okay.
Any other question, Councilmember Garetano?
Nope. Not at
Okay.
this time.
Councilmember Jackson.
So normally I would not ask for a second vote on monetary issues, certainly one of this. Give the resident, so everybody an opportunity to consider it. As I said earlier this evening, I was considering it. So I do have a question for you. If we don't vote on, if we don't call for second reading tonight, what does that do to your? Nothing happens for a month until the council meets again.
That's correct.
nothing, there will be no further negotiation, get some answers to some of the questions we talked about in the work session, et cetera.
Councilmember Jaxi, we can certainly pursue answers to some of the questions, but in terms of any substantive efforts going forward, until such time as there a second reading and then ultimate passage of this, nothing further would be done in terms of developing a plan or anything like that on the part of Spectrum. So it would have to wait until the meeting in January, barring any other action this council may take.
So I'm at a loss. To use the military, my mission, as I understand it, is to represent residents of Wildwood, all of them, but certainly the residents of Ward. As I said earlier, I greatly appreciate the conversation and the passion and the part of members that would like more information, would like to see more come out of this bill. But I cannot go home tonight. Know that I'm doing everything I can. 5,000 residents, or however many in Ward 6, to get them service as quickly as possible. I'm going to make a motion for a second reading.
So we have a motion for second reading, which has been made by Councilmember Jackson, which has been seconded by Councilmember Dodwell. Councilor Rambo, you had your hand up. And this is on the motion for second reading only? Well, go ahead. What were you going to say? And then we can take it if it is or isn't.
We have learned I hope we unserved and underserved internet access pockets are addressed by the city.
So
that's I'm looking to make that time.
So that would be after this is decided. And as I mentioned to the council, I would propose language you're free to take or leave or tweak to accomplish exactly what you and I believe Councilor Garitano and others have expressed. But we got to take this first. Okay. So we have a motion for a second reading that's been seconded. Any discussion on that motion? Councilor Garitano?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I did have some questions from the representative from Spectrum here that, were part of when we did the first reading. So I'd like to ask those questions, but I also have some comments just relating to the request to do the second reading.
Okay. Mr. Bear, would you like to come forward to answer Mr. Councilor Garitano's questions?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I think, Mayor, if I can, I think I heard one question while I was out there, and I think the question was about our maps.
That was from Councilor Garitano, and he's just getting ready to ask you about that probably.
So, Councilman, with regards to the map that you have right now in the agreement, we were the only company within the RFP process that actually did an official walkout of the city. And so we wanted to make sure that we were going to be able to serve the unserved as well as the underserved areas. And while we had a walkout, that's the first step that most operators do. The second major step, though, is now the survey maps. Now, with regard to the survey maps, we've already discussed the issue with Mr. Cross and Mr. Young, that we will be once we have them completed, we will be working with city staff, showing those maps and figuring out what is the best locations to start in terms of the construction process.
Okay, so since you brought up about the maps, and I'm referring to the map that is Exhibit A, which is known as the service area, and ultimately the design plan specifies the map, the service area, which is Exhibit A. My question and my concern is getting the bill right. I am 100% for internet access, but I'm also for 100% of residents that are underserved or unserved. And so it gives me heartburn when we don't have that 100%. And so since you mentioned the maps, there is an area I represent, and there's some council members that have pockets as well. I mean, if we're going to be Santa, how can we forget the people in Christmas Valley, right? I mean, you know, it's not reflected in the map. And, you know, you're obviously here speaking on the record. How do we make sure if it's not reflected on the map that they get included?
Under the assumption that they meet the federal definition of unserved and underserved.
Understood.
Because we're using
Which
federal.
that
funds
would
for
be applicable to
all of it.
anyone,
Yes,
right?
So with that caveat, go ahead.
Well, first, Councilman, I don't know the area that you're talking about. That would probably have to be reviewed by our construction team. I think when we looked at the maps, and obviously when we had the initial process of the RFP, you know, our goal was to serve what the city considered to be unserved, underserved. And so that's where the walkout process was. And that's why we ended up probably being the only company that basically said, hey, there's 2,025 passings that meet that criteria. Now, I don't know if that area includes, of that passing includes your area. That would probably be something that we need to then look at.
So that,
And I'm not the construction guy. I'm in the government affairs team.
Yes.
So obviously, if there is an area, then I think we probably need to at least take a look at it and where it's located.
and I think that ties into what Councilmember Rambo says, that there's just some vagueness and some
Right.
spots. We want to get it right. I
Right.
mean, we have worked so hard to get to this point. And so, yeah, I'm supportive of a first reading because we want to keep the process moving. But I want to make sure they get the insurances because as Councilmember Jackson, he has his areas that he represents, and I have mine, and we have to look out for them. And if I'm not speaking for them, I'm doing a disservice. And so,
And Councilman, I guess the only thing is what the mayor somewhat alluded to is the fact that if your area though does have 100 meg service, you're no longer in.
He's not talking about that.
He's
He's
not.
talking, about these are, based on what he's
They get-
mentioned, they are unserved or underserved.
I could talk a little bit more technical. Their community, a pocket that is east of 109. And they are surrounded by spectrum, but for some reason, the houses that they could look at get spectrum, but they can't get spectrum in their community. So the only service that they get today, some do, not even all, is some just DSL, 50 megabits per second at most. And that's it.
Okay.
And they've been calling for years. And, you know, I was so excited when I knew we were going to have this. I called them Saturday morning. I said, great news. We've got something, but I need to make sure.
Okay, yeah, I think I could certainly talk with Mr. Cross tomorrow and we can look at that spot and work with the construction team and check that out.
I mean, is that? We could look as
Unfortunately,
good. I'm
Councilman,
looking
you're
for,
asking me for an answer that quite candidly, I can't give you tonight. Hey, I can only tell you that the map that we provided, that was based on our that's a walkout map.
well, the concern is that the language is very specific about the exhibit area. And how do we still find a way to keep moving forward? Let's get this, but make sure, again, 100% for high-speed broadband internet, but I want 100%
Mhm.
that we don't leave no computer behind.
Well, we're certainly wanting to make sure as well. As you know, we have most of the community as it is in providing that service. And, you know, certainly we worked with Mr. Young and Mr. Cross on this particular agreement. And let me just say that we really appreciate the work of Mr. Cross and Mr. Young on this. I think it was a very amicable negotiation process. Obviously, it took a while with the RFP being 2 years, but, you know, we got it done. So we're at this point wanting to get it done and continue to serve the whole area.
Well, I do have just a couple more just questions regarding questions I've gotten, but when this is rolled out, fiber to the premises and the service area, which is primarily east of 109, my understanding is that for the first 6 months, folks will be able to take advantage of a $99 installation if it's over 400 feet.
Over 400, that's correct.
What price does it go to? Because the next question I get and others will get is, well, somebody a year from now buys a house, they lost out on the 6-month deal. What price do they get for installation?
Well, I mean, there's, again, depends on the footage, but I mean, as right now, it's a 99.99. I mean, that price is of right now.
Yeah.
Under that scenario, is probably close to double.
So double.
Yeah.
So you're talking about $200.
Close to it.
Close to it. But we've had residents that have come in and said they've been quoted thousands of dollars. Is that going to be that kind of scenario or different?
People that were asked $1,000 are probably those that were in the unserved areas.
Okay.
And then have said to us, hey, we want to build a particular subdivision. And then what took place was then that our construction team did a site survey and basically said, okay, this is what it would cost you to provide these services. So when people were saying $1,000, that was obviously before this whole process.
Okay.
came about.
And one caveat, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm assuming volume basis, if you're looking at a subdivision.
So I do have one other question that is, again, pertaining to just for people that are existing customers. Does anything change for them out of this deal? Do they get anything new?
Not necessarily, Councilman, because they already have, they do have our services already. I mean, the benefits we, what we're really hoping is that once we complete and build out everywhere, we're looking then that we can be able to say to everybody, when we have speed increases, hey, we're doing this for the whole city now, not just
Yeah.
for certain areas.
And so the thing is, I would just for point of information, because they're already served and we're using all federal funds for this, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, City Attorney Young, we couldn't, under this particular contract, with these particular funds, use it because they're not under the federal definition of served or underserved. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, that said, to what you just mentioned, my hope would be, and obviously this is a decision for the group, but if this gets implemented and it works well, that we have another chat and we see what federal infrastructure monies are available. And even if not, we still have a chat about what we can do to improve service citywide.
Right.
Okay. So
Because
based on this template that we're
Yep.
working with right now.
well, there's the pipe that you're putting in with fiber provides synchronous, service where those who are on coax are asynchronous. So there's a, reduced upload speed.
There are things that are being done right now with hybrid fiber coax that are going to improve those speeds. There's
So more to come,
more to come on that
but
technology
not
as
part
well.
of this deal. Okay. Well, you did answer some questions here, but what I'm gathering from what your answer is that you can look into this tomorrow to look into see these areas.
Yeah, I could talk. to him.
But we
Mr.
need, we
Cross
would
and I
need to
could
get
talk
an
tomorrow.
answer because we obviously would like to move forward ultimately with the second reading. But I think those answers are important to get in order to get that second reading.
Councilman.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Clark.
I have a couple points. One is on that, on the maps, have we given all of our areas that that residents have come to us in our different wards to Mr. Cross so that he has that listed? Because
Joe's answering yes, but I'm not sure
Yes,
that's the case with everyone.
That's what I'm asking. Maybe we should, if we have some of those areas, for example, in Ward 1, Bays has come in and I have 60 homes there that have just gotten coverage. So that's an area that's, maybe will be one that can be taken off the list. I don't know, but just there might be some that can be rearranged, but another point was the 100 up, 100 down, the symmetrical is only what they're capable of. That's not what the packages cover, right? There's like a number of packages, but none of them are that. That's just what they have to be capable of for our ARPA fund, as I understand it. But if we get all of that information that I was talking about from the different wards and Mr. Cross, and you have this, the map that we're talking about, you say that that's just like an initial map, and you can go together with these two and union them and come up with a full map. Are you willing to?
I can tell you that under the RFP process, we provided a map that was the walkout. And that's what the city wished for us to do under the RFP process.
So,
in which we have been following.
in other words, what he's saying politely is, I think and this is what I understand from John and Steve, what we got in terms of their response was exactly what the RFP asked them to provide.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Councilor Donovan. And we're having some leeway here, but just as a reminder, the motion is for second reading. That's all.
Well, I want to support moving forward with the second reading. I also want to indicate that I think we're arguing over pieces of dust versus what the big picture needs to be. We have to put some confidence in the individuals from the city of Wildwood who have been speaking with Charter. We have to put some confidence in our city attorney who has been working with Charter. And we also have to start looking at, as was requested, the map of where they start first. And as we go through this process, we will probably uncover additional technology challenges. We will uncover additional things that a resident may want, but a resident may not want to pay for. I moved out here in, I don't even remember what year now, 30 years ago. And there was no internet on the east side of what wasn't Wildwood at the time. And so I guess I have a really hard time saying that we have to give all of our residents something for no investment on their part, because I invested a lot of money to get an internet run out to my house because I was IT and I needed internet. So I know a lot of our residents have spent their dollars to get some form of that. I don't want to delay this process another day. If we have a vendor who is willing to get started now and to get started in our underserved area or not served area ASAP. So I'm going to push for a second reading tonight, and let's get this ball rolling, because the only way we're going to understand where we have deficiencies that we need to address more expeditiously than other areas, where we have challenges that we're going to have to possibly explain to our citizens, where we're going to have to push on Charter or Spectrum here.
You can say
Spectrum.
Charter. It's
That's okay. I was chastising the mayor earlier tonight because I said, you keep saying Charter, why Charter? So I made the same mistake. I just think we could bat this around for days and days and days. Sometimes you just have to take the challenge and jump out of the plane and hope that you folded the parachute right and that you're going to make it down to the ground. So I'm going today.
Thank you, Councilmember Edens. My apology to you. You were actually in line before Councilmember Dodwell and I got sidetracked. So my apologies.
That's okay.
All right.
I'm gonna head up the rear. So I just want to clarify something because based on your previous answer, I thought something wasn't settled. So my understanding was that the map was a starting point. You would continue to meet with city and staff, walk out and reevaluate anything.
Wait,
But then-
okay, pardon me. Our next step is this design mapping. That's
Okay.
always comes next. And we have told the city, because the city did ask us, is there a way that we could have some input on where you're going to start into this particular area? And we said, yes, we would be willing to sit down with the city and work on that issue.
So here's my question. Can that include reevaluating any areas that we believe you missed? So the city initially did with our what used to be named the Rural Internet Access Committee, RIAC, which is now just the Internet Access
Answer
Committee.
that question. He may just answer right now.
I believe he did answer and I was asking a
Well, I know,
follow-up.
I would get his answer. Go ahead, but I mean, you ask your question.
What I was trying to say was the map that I saw today
Right.
did not include areas that the city had previously identified on our own maps as underserved and no service in my ward, areas that people are only on their cell phones. How do I make sure that those are at your attention and included in that site plan? Is the best way to do that to email staff and have you evaluate them?
I would say certainly to email staff. Now, I will tell you that if I recall, when I had discussions initially with Joe, a lot of the city's maps on this were based on maps that we provided them back in 2011, when this process actually first started. So like I said, this is the first time that a walkout has actually been done into some of these areas in which there was certainly either no service at all or the areas were underserved.
Okay, and I understand that, but what I'm saying is I feel very strongly that some areas were missed, and I'm asking about the process you would like us to go through as council members to bring that to your
Certainly,
attention.
you should go to Mr. Cross,
Okay,
and we could certainly discuss that.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was trying to help there. My apology.
Yeah.
Okay, seeing nothing further. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor McCutcheon, then Councilor, we have a lot more. Okay, Councilor McCutcheon, go ahead.
Never mind.
Councilor Bartoni.
I don't have any questions for you. Thank you for coming. On the second reading, and this is why the reason I'm not going to be able to support a second reading is it is the financial impact. And I don't know if we're allowed to say this dollar amount yet to the public, but we have not done second readings because we've wanted the public to have another look at this. And those dollar amounts have been less than 0.5% of this bill. So, I mean, that's just kind of what's gotten me a little bit hung up on this. The other part about that is when you look at this bill, if you look at the previous one with the USGS budgetary impact, 105,000. For this one, there's nothing there. So it's not even like the public has any idea about this yet. The funding source is blank. We just haven't even notified the public enough on this yet. And I mean, this is going to go through, but I think we just need to be diligent and do it the right way and give the public their opportunity to speak. And I think it would be irresponsible for us to pass this dollar amount without the public knowing the dollar amount.
We'll handle those. So what is the dollar amount? 6.75. I will tell you, Councilor Bartoni, I actually shared your concern and I've expressed it at council meetings previously when the issue has come up relative to second readings, that when they have a monetary amount, my barometer goes up considerably because, as you pointed out, they deal with money, whereas a lot split and so on and so forth does not deal with the expenditure of city money. The council members from wards 1 and 6 will tell you that over the weekend, I expressed reservation just like you did. And the reason that and I'm just speaking personally, that if the council decides to go with a second reading tonight, that I'm comfortable with it, is because that number, 6.75 million, the source of that number, the federal funding, and everything but who we were doing it with, has been made public, but particularly the monitoring, because to me, that's the biggest thing, as you pointed out. That has been made public on our city's Facebook page, it's been in West News Magazine, I believe, a couple of times. I've put it on my Facebook page. So the reason I'm not expressing the same concern that I have previously about that issue, and again, I'm just speaking personally, is because I think that a member of our city a citizen would be very hard pressed to say that they were not aware of this. Had it not had all that publicity and this not have been talked about for months and have been out there, I would absolutely second everything you just said. And that's the only reason I'm able, but that's a personal decision. I'm just speaking personally.
Well, and if I could, comment on your comment, I'm personally not on Facebook, so I didn't see any of that. And I'm dead set on being the last person to join Facebook. So I won't see it next year either. But I mean, we're a council. We're not a social group. We're not a Facebook group. And we're responsible to present these items and to present the material at council, not on Facebook. It's not West News's responsibility. It's not the news's responsibility. It's ours. And we haven't done that here. And it's in writing that we haven't done it.
I think we have had work sessions where this council approved the proceeding to have this legislation prepared, if my memory serves me correctly.
We have. We don't have a dollar amount.
No, it was
written here.
6.75. I'm pretty sure.
It's not on here. That can't be debated. It's presented to council tonight in a bill, and it's not on here.
Thank you. Council Member Jackson, Council Member McCutcheon, were you took a pass? Councilmember Jackson.
I just wanted to respond. I fully appreciate where you're coming from. The dollar figure certainly is monumental, as Joe pointed out earlier. It's probably the biggest the council's ever approved. So if a citizen came in here and said, I don't think we should spend that 6.75 or 7.15, it's going to go back to the federal government. It's not coming. My point is, it's not coming out of Wildwood dollars specifically. And I've got at least 5,000 or however many citizens in Ward 6 that will. I'm sorry. I get it about the dollar figure. This is not Wildwood money. This is federal dollars.
Councilor McCutcheon.
Yeah.
Anything new?
I think so.
Okay.
So I have a question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
Should council decide they don't want to do a second reading because there's additional questions that they feel like needs to be answered, how is that going to impact your decision to go forward and work with us and resolve those issues?
Good question. I don't really think I have an answer for that yet. I mean, certainly this has been a 2-year process that we've been working with the city on. I mean, certainly we're not going to be doing any kind of designs, mapping, unless we have an agreement that's reached. That's a key component,
So
Obviously,
are you requiring a second reading for this evening?
No, I'm not. I haven't said that at all.
Council Member, did I see a hand?
Yes. I really just wanted to reassure that there are pockets of unserved people, but Mr. Vunich is up to the minute on these areas that have been recently served.
We have a couple of neighborhoods that have gotten fiber to the home for like 50, 60 homes. That should be sent to Mr. Cross, and I'm going to try to work with him. Joe Vunich, I know, will work with him to get those logged so that maybe we'll be able to cover some of the unserved remaining people. I don't think this is going to be vague for 60 days before they do their design, their detailed design. So I'm hoping we can do a second reading.
Okay, the motion on the floor is for second reading. As you know, this Councilor Garetano.
Yeah, so I think my position at this point right now is you stated that you're willing to work in looking at these areas here. And I think it would be prudent for us to be able to give the city the opportunity, because we're talking about residents here. You know, they may be tiny specks, but you know, they are residents with families that we cannot leave out. And so we want to work with you on that. We want to get it right. And I really don't feel it's prudent to fast track a bill of this size, this massive price tag. It's historically Wildwood's largest bill for a specific issue. And we just need to honor the process that has been established here. So I think we've got a path forward, but I think a first reading would be a great first step. It shows certainly our good faith and intent. Now we want you to work with us just to address those specific areas, and then we can resolve this. I mean, we've called special meetings for trash contracts, so we can do it. We could bring it home. Thank you.
Okay. Good comments and discussion and questions. Thanks to all of you for the participation in that. Finally, the vote is to have a second reading. We'll do a roll call vote, please. And as you know, this will be a supermajority requirement, 2/3 of the council to have a second reading this evening. Please call the roll, Ms. Eldridge. A yes vote is to have it.
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
With some reservation for details that we're still needing, yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yeah.
Councilmember Nyan,
No.
Councilmember Bartoni,
No.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani,
Yes.
Councilmember Hopper,
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Edens,
No.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
I'm sorry, we didn't hear you, Councilmember Brost.
Yes.
Still didn't hear you.
Yes.
Thumbs up is- Okay,
Now
thank
we
you.
go.
Councilmember Garitano,
No.
Okay, the motion for second reading passes. Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2661 a second time.
Bill 2661, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to execute a broadband infrastructure design, installation, and operation agreement, second reading.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councilmember Edens.
Yes, I mean, it wasn't successful at postponing a second reading, but for final passage, I'm, going to support final passage, but understand where I'm coming from. You're saying you need an agreement to get more details. That's not a really great answer to tell our residents when they come to us and say, hey, am I included? I have no service at all. And I have to go, gee, I don't know, but we just passed something with a lot of money for areas in my ward. So I came away less satisfied than I was before our discussion with charter, but it is what it is. So we're going to help a lot of folks with this, though.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Garitano.
Yeah, again, I think that we just have to find a way to do that. And I would like to ask the city attorney again, what guidance or advice could we do to build into the motion to make sure that those areas will be included? Because they've been around for a long time and there's been no incentive to do anything about those pockets. So how do we get assurance that these people will not be left behind? Because in the contract that is black and white, that it specifically states that Exhibit A are those areas, and some of those areas exclude the residents that I represent that again have underserved internet access.
City Attorney Young.
I would suggest consideration of the motion that the mayor had referenced earlier.
Could you repeat that, please, so I can understand it better?
The motion or what he said? Which are you wanting repeated, Councilor Garitano?
How do we get the assurance built in that we will have those areas that are not included in Exhibit A to be included?
Yeah, I mean, the best I can answer to you is to recommend to you to consider the motion that the mayor had previously referenced.
What is that motion?
Would you like me to read it?
Yes, please.
So without confusing what we have on the floor, which is the motion for second reading, have you read that secondly? Yeah. Okay. So we have a final vote left on that. But to answer the question, Councilor Garetano, this was my suggested motion that the city of Wildwood pursue, and this would be just procedurally after this vote is taken, because we can't do two motions at the same time, obviously. That the city of Wildwood pursue agreement from Spectrum to include service to smaller, underserved, and unserved areas that qualify for use of the applicable federal funds, comma, to occur within 75 days of the date of the Spectrum agreement.
Can you just one more time say that, please?
That the city of Wildwood pursue agreement from Spectrum to include service to smaller, underserved, and unserved areas of the city that qualify for use of the applicable federal funds, comma, to occur within 75 days of the date of the Spectrum agreement.
And the city will pursue it. So again, if I could ask the gentleman a question from Spectrum.
Sure.
Yes, Councilman.
Okay, so you understand why this is so important to me and some of our council members?
Yes, I understand it.
Okay, I want to make sure it's clear. So, because, you know, we have folks that have been asking, they're going to read about it. And I need to know what answer to give them. So what can you tell me about that? What do you need to know? What is it that Spectrum will have to do?
Councilman, first of all, again, I'm not in the construction area. I've got to know exactly where your area is. Construction's going to have to look at it and assess that area. I mean, one of the things that, and if I may, one of the things that we've looked at by having this agreement with the city, we think it's going to be much easier for us then to maybe go into some areas of the city that maybe are built out all of a sudden that we've already served. And maybe a subdivision or a home has been built out before, and we weren't able to get to it because it was just in the border of those unserved areas. I think that's an opportunity now we're going to be able to build out further.
So I'm going to ask, we've been down this road a lot, and there's a lot of leeway on this, and I'm hearing the same questions get asked 4 and 5 different ways. So what he's after is this, if I may, Councilor Garetano. If I may?
Yes.
Okay. So what he's after is, and I understand you have other people in construction and your company is quite large and you are just one of those, although a very important part of it, I am certain. And we've heard you say that the agreement is fluid and you know, you're the only company that submitted the map that you submitted.
Right.
You've heard the concerns that he's expressed in others about
Right.
making sure that we don't leave people behind.
Right.
Okay. In your strongest words possible, what can you tell us that Spectrum is going to do relative to including them as this process goes forward, if the agreement is signed relative to the city's input and that sort of thing, assuming that everyone does what you ask them to do, get the areas to the city administrator?
Right.
That's the question.
And I think that at that point, once we have those locations that Mr. Cross will have, he'll be working with me and the construction team. We'll be looking at those areas to make sure that they really are unserved, underserved areas as defined
Okay. And
by
if they are,
the FCC. And if they are, then, you know, we certainly want to work about getting those areas taken care
and
of.
you're going to give us a say in that, correct?
We'll be talking obviously with you, as we mentioned right away to Steve and John. You know, once we have those maps, we're going to be sitting down with the city on these issues.
Anything you want to ask any differently? I
Well,
tried to make it as.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're crossing the T's and dotting the I's because it is important. And, if we're talking about 6.75 million, we need to take our time. I mean, we've talked about $200,000 for 2 hours before in the past. So will it require a new agreement, or will we need to amend the agreement? What kind of mechanics?
If
would that
this
have?
motion passes, I would leave that to the city attorney as to whether it's an amendment to this agreement or whether it's a new agreement. And I frankly wouldn't care about that. I would just like to see it happen.
Well, I know how I feel. I would like to hear if we would have, what others think about it.
Councilman, I would say that that's an area that needs to be served, and we have to have an attachment to the agreement or something. I'm sure that Mr. Young and our legal counsel that's been working with him on this particular agreement will figure out a way to.
Is there a way we could expedite that 75 days?
Well, I think the city attorney, we can't get into closed session, but that was not just picked out of the blue.
Right.
I guess. City attorney Young.
No, the 75 days is a negotiated term that I would suggest sticking with.
Mr. Vinich, I did not. Thank you, Councilman Rambo.
Thank you, Mayor, but I changed my mind. Thank you.
Okay. All right, council members, Councilor Farmer.
Real quick, I think if my math was right, I was the deciding vote to be in a second reading here. And that's a painful vote, not because I don't think that the people in wards 1 and 6 and other places, well, I still feel rough about it. So I'm going to say a few words about this. I'm a pretty pragmatic guy. I appreciate the gentleman from Spectrum making an appearance this evening. The reason that the people in the more populated wards don't have internet is because they're not going to get it. That's what's going to happen. They're not going to get it. So what we're doing is we're giving the people that need something what they need to have. The rest of us will not get to make all of our residents happy. And that's just kind of one of the sucky parts about this job. But the important thing is there are kids that need it. So let's do it.
Councilor Bartoni.
I hope you're wrong.
Me too.
But I won't, I'm not going to bet a whole lot on it. If the motion hasn't been made to add what was spoken earlier to this, I will make that motion while we have everybody's attention and while we have the gentleman from Spectrum's attention, so that we just talk about this now. We might not get the answer we want, but we're at least going to talk about it now. So I will make that motion that we add that to this ordinance or whatever we're calling it at this point, to get these other areas in Ward 2, in Ward 8, in Ward 3, and everybody else, they at least get the attention that they deserve.
City Attorney Young.
So my understanding of the motion was after, assuming it was approved, that motion would be made to direct staff to take those actions, not as an amendment to this ordinance or to the agreement, as I believe it would be an impediment to final signature on the agreement.
So we can't add that.
You can, but if you do, you'll likely kill the whole deal because they're not going to agree to that.
Could you point of information? What do you mean by they won't agree to it?
If they won't agree to our staff looking into it. Because he just said that they would look into it. They just said that he would talk to staff.
Right, and he will do that. If we're asking to put this as a condition on the agreement, though, I mean, this is a negotiated agreement, and that's just gonna, it significantly delays, because now we're gonna have to get the lawyers involved in terms of negotiating and execution, whereas before, and what the motion was a direction to city staff to take certain actions.
And my understanding,
Joe, I think you're right. Now I know you're right.
My understanding, isn't it the case that the agreement obligates, once it's signed, obligates Spectrum to do exactly what we've been discussing them doing, which is to work with the city to get the people and our input into people online, which is what I think that amendment was about. So isn't it already in there?
There is language with regard to the city having input on the design plan, yes.
That's the design plan. So that's effectively what you're talking about. Councilmember Bertolino.
About to call the question.
So the question has been called. And the calling of the question will require a second, which we have, and it will require a 2/3 vote, which is 11. We'll do it by voice vote. If that doesn't work, we'll do it by roll call. All in favor of calling the question, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Question has been called. Please call the roll for final passage of Bill 2661. Bill 2661, second reading, final passage.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Hesitantly, yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Nyan,
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani,
Yes.
Councilmember Hopper,
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Edens.
Yes.
Councilmember Bros,
Yes.
Councilmember Garitano,
Yes, condition, I will make the motion after this.
Councilmember Flasher.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. And if I could just take a point of personal privilege, I'd like to say, first of all, I want to extend thanks to people in this room. Without naming names, there have been many of you that have been on our Rural Internet Access Committee, have spoken with residents about this problem that has plagued our city for years. I want to thank John and Steve for working on the project. I want to thank Charter for responding to the RFP and reaching this point. I want to thank, most importantly, our residents for their patience. And you all, in my opinion, are to be congratulated on the move that you took this evening with respect to this bill. Okay, now to the motion. Councilor Garitano, do you remember the language? Or do
No,
you want me to read that again?
no, I think you might want to read it. Yeah.
Okay, I'll do that. So, and again, feel free to take away, add, whatever you want to do. So the motion would be that the city of Wildwood pursue agreement from Spectrum to include service to smaller, underserved, and hold on, I'm going to tweak my own language here. Include service to, smaller, underserved, and unserved areas of the city that qualify for use of the federal funds, applicable federal funds, to occur within 75 days of the date of the Spectrum agreement. That would be my proposed language for the motion.
Can we include any more specifics about the areas that we talked about, or at least the
I would
wards?
not do that at the risk of there's no way we'll know everyone to include. And the minute you do that, you're going to fall right on the sword that you're concerned about, which is someone not getting included.
So I would like to give the privilege, because I think Councilmember Jaxi offered, if I recall, did you say you would make that motion? And I would like to give you that honor. So with that, and then I would be happy to second that.
Okay. Okay. And seconded by Councilmember Garitano. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. So you're welcome. Councilmember Jackson. So we have a motion and a second with the motion as read. Do you want me to read it again, or is everyone good with it? Okay. We'll just do we'll just do a voice vote. All in favor of the motion and see how that goes. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. All right. Thank you for being here tonight and for your time. Appreciate it. Moving next to the consent agenda, we have no resolutions, although we do have one not under the resolution section. It's on the consent agenda. We have 3 items on the consent agenda. The first is resolution 2021-25. It relates to also using funds from other sources for the Wildwood Yoga and Wellness Program of $17,820. By other sources, I mean non-city funds. That's as spelled out, I believe, in the background. The resolution 2021-26 which relates to participation in the national opioid settlements. And lastly, giving me the authority to approve expenditures for the month, given that we will not have a second meeting. And for your information, I'll approach that just as I have done historically, as well as in November. You'll be provided with those for review before I approve them. So is everyone comfortable with these three items being voted in tandem as part of the consent agenda? Councilor Bartoni.
I'm okay. I just have a question.
Sure.
On one. So on the opioid one, and this might be for City Attorney Young, is there actually money the city is receiving, or is this just to be included in like a class action suit?
The class action suit is concluded. Award of monetary settlement has been reached, and the city will receive money if they join the settlement.
Oh, wonderful. Do we know what that amount is at this point?
I did at one point. Steve, do you recall?
Does it move the needle?
It's not a whole lot. I mean, they're looking ultimately at $500 million full money that the state of Missouri would get everybody opted in to the settlement. It's yet to be determined. I know, and for people, I'm sorry. As I was saying, it is ultimately it's a $500 million pot of money that could come to the state. If everybody opted in, it'd be about half of that if they didn't hit certain incentive points. And then depending on who joins in on this settlement, it could be a fair amount of money. I mean, not all.
So the bottom line is we don't know.
We don't know, but
it's more than
not-
we would
it's not
have if we don't
insignificant.
participate.
Yeah, sure. I'm
Okay.
all in favor of it. I just was kind of
All right.
clarification. It's a great deal.
So everyone good with these three being on the consent agenda? If so, I take a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented, made by Councilor Dodwell, second by Councilor Galani. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion to approve the consent agenda as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Anything under miscellaneous? Quickly, please.
Yeah, I've taken the microphone enough tonight, so I may as well end it on a good note. I shared with Steve before, I bought this Apple Watch because it has a lot of nice features, but I never got the high heart rate alert buzzing all night long like I did tonight. So please understand my passion for getting it right. And I want to thank Councilmember Edens for the spirit of the holidays, although I did not partake in the ugly sweater. It's nice to see it, but no one will ever beat Councilmember Remy's outfit that he had years ago. He certainly has the
I don't know.
trophy.
I was just thinking that why is it Councilmember Edens comes up with all these competitions that she wins?
Isn't it funny how when you
That's a
set the
compliment.
rule for
You
the
look very nice
competition,
for that
yeah,
this year at Christmas.
nothing says take me seriously like my small little Santa
There
hat,
you
right?
go.
Yeah.
Councilmember Flasher.
Yeah, I hate to bring this up right now because it's a late meeting, but I went by the Wildwood Park today and noticed that we still have the mask signs up, and now there is no mask ordinance in the county at all. Just wondering if there is a timeline for when we might take those down.
We will talk with the city administrator in the morning. Councilmember Clark.
I had driven by West Glen Farms and I had some reports from other residents that they had driven by there and they're still turning left at that outer road. Yeah. Just
We made the
FYI.
city administrator aware of it. He'll talk with the police and we'll see what we can do. Councilmember Edens.
Yep, I had a resident contact me today and he's been in contact with the city before. He has a neighbor that purposefully likes to repeatedly up to 20 times honk his horn at 6 a.m. And he was told that there is a law in the books in Baldwin. If he would like to make a comment to pursue a sound ordinance related to excessive horn honking, what would that be to go through planning and parks?
That would actually probably be a Board of Public Safety issue. I think.
Board of Public Safety. I wasn't sure if it was noise code. Okay,
Councilmember Dodwell.
thank you.
You're welcome.
I would like to thank everybody in this room for a very good year of camaraderie, professionalism, and doing the work that our citizens have put us in here for. It's an honor to work, serve, and have a good time at times with each and every one of you. And I wish everyone a very happy Christmas and pray to God that next year is going to be a better year in so many different ways. So thank you all.
Thank you. All right. Happy holiday. Anyone else? Happy holidays to everyone. Great job again. And Have a safe holiday. We'll see you in January. Oh, sorry. Yes, motion to adjourn. Who wants to make a motion to adjourn? Made by Councilmember Hopper, seconded by Councilmember Nyan. Her first of the evening. Thank you. And that's right. Hey, a motion to adjourn is actually the most, I'll show you why. It's a very important motion. All right. And it's non-debatable. All in favor of the motion to adjourn, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?